Very interesting. So we're going to get into those comments from Sue Bird, and then we're also going to talk about Natasha Cloud. And then we're going to talk about Hailey Van Lith. Here was Sue just a couple days ago, I believe, on A Touch More podcast.
Sue Bird just stepped into a minefield because what she's saying sounds noble on the surface, but when you actually examine the WNBA's track record on free speech, her entire argument falls apart. And the timing of this statement, just days before Natasha Cloud finally gets signed, reveals something fascinating about how this league actually operates versus how it presents itself to the public.
Now, Sue Bird is both correct and wrong. She is correct with some things. She is absolutely wrong in other things. Yes, this is an activist league. Nobody's going to argue about that. Now, she says that the league was built on that or whatever.
Now, here's where Sue Bird's argument starts to crumble. She claims the WNBA was built on activism, that being outspoken is part of the league's fabric from day one. But anyone who actually watched the WNBA in the late 90s and early 2000s knows that's revisionist history. The league was built on basketball, period. It was marketed around star players like Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, and Cynthia Cooper dominating on the court. The activist identity came later, much later. And here's the real issue with Bird's statement. She's conflating two completely different things. Yes, the WNBA has become an activist league. Nobody disputes that. But when she says the league stands up for players who speak out, she's only telling half the story, because this league doesn't protect all speech. It protects specific speech that aligns with a specific agenda.
Now, it's not really accurate. The league is only about speaking out on the agenda of this activist league. Let's be for real. Now, I don't know if Natasha Cloud was being blackballed because of her political positions or worldview. I don't know that. In fact, I've got some other thoughts that I have given and then I will reiterate here. Sounds to me like Sue, who's part of ownership, really believed that that was the case. I don't know about all that, but...
And there it is. The question nobody in WNBA leadership wants to answer honestly. Because Sue Bird, who's now part ownership with the Seattle Storm, just said she doesn't want to live in a world where Natasha Cloud gets punished for being outspoken. But let's run a thought experiment here. What if a WNBA player posted enthusiastically about supporting Donald Trump? What if someone had a very public, very vocal pro-Israel stance during the height of campus protests last year? What if a player talked openly about traditional biblical marriage between a man and a woman? Would Sue Bird defend those players with the same energy? Would the league celebrate that as part of their activist fabric? Or would that player suddenly find themselves in sensitivity training, facing league discipline, or quietly encouraged to keep those views private? The WNBA doesn't have a free speech culture. It has an approved speech culture. And that's a massive distinction that gets glossed over every time someone like Sue Bird makes these grand statements about the league's values.
Freedom here. This is we weren't born yesterday. Breonna Stewart, she can have her sign, abolish ICE. This is not the WNBA. It is unrivaled. Same concept. If someone had a sign that was the opposite of that, who's standing up for those people? So no, yes, it's an activist league. No, it wasn't built on just standing up and speaking out. It's built on your agenda. So let's just be clear.
Now, to be fair to Sue Bird, she might actually believe Natasha Cloud was being blackballed for her political views. Cloud is openly socialist, extremely vocal about police abolition, and has never been shy about criticizing American capitalism. Those are controversial positions, even in a progressive league. But here's where I disagree with Bird's assessment. I don't think Cloud was unsigned because of her politics. I think teams didn't want to deal with the baggage that came with how she criticized the WNBA itself during CBA negotiations. Remember, this is the player who essentially said the league didn't need to exist, that players could just go to Unrivaled and make more money there. She positioned herself as above the WNBA, while simultaneously expecting WNBA teams to pay her. That's not political persecution, that's a business decision. No organization wants to pay someone who publicly trashes them and suggests they're irrelevant.
At the expense of Hailey Van Lith, who was waived. The Chicago Sky posted this graphic on X. Thank you, Hailey Van Lith. And we know that when that thank you comes, it's not some announcement of a grand promotion. It's usually a bye-bye. And that's exactly what it is for Hailey Van Lith. And Moreau Sports posted Tyler Marsh's statement about Hailey. Tyler Marsh on release.
The Chicago Sky just executed one of the most aggressive roster overhauls we've seen in recent WNBA history. And it all happened in about 72 hours. Jordan Hobbs waived. Megan Nestor waived. Natasha Lattimore waived. Toni Morgan waived. Maddie Westpeld waived. Aisha Coulibaly waived. And then the one that really stings, Hailey Van Lith waived. That's 7 players shown the door in 3 days. And the reason is standing right in the middle of that welcome graphic. Natasha Cloud, 1-year deal, reportedly $555,000. Now, Tyler Marsh tried to soften the blow with the usual coach speak about tough decisions and the business side of basketball. But let's read between the lines of what he actually said about Hailey Van Lith.
For us, it kind of comes down to a numbers game. And then obviously with the addition of Natasha Cloud, it's kind of the nature of the business sometimes. She's in great spirits. That's kind of how she moves. She carries herself with really good energy. She's a professional. She's mature, and we were wishing her well moving forward.
It comes down to a numbers game. That's code for we needed the roster spot and the cap space for someone we wanted more. And that someone is Natasha Cloud. Here's what makes this particularly brutal for Hailey Van Lith. She dealt with injuries throughout her rookie season. Never got a real chance to show what she could do at full strength. By all accounts, she was performing well in preseason, finally healthy, finally getting into a rhythm. And just when it looked like she might carve out a role for herself, the Sky decided they'd rather have a veteran point guard with baggage. Now, I'm not saying that's the wrong decision basketball-wise. Cloud is a proven player, a championship winner with the Las Vegas Aces in 2023. She brings experience, leadership, and playmaking that a rebuilding Sky team desperately needs. But the timing is cold. Van Lith gets cut right when she's trending upward.
Natasha Cloud, the Sky's also minus some other people because, again, the Cloud stepped on into Monday like it was Friday. We're going to take a look at the list of players, and this might be a partial list, but it's so long, I can't imagine it's a partial list of people who got the thank you from Chicago. So just in the last few days, we have Jordan Hobbs with the bye or the thank you. We have Megan Nestor with the thank you. We have Natasha Lattimore with the thank you. We have Toni Morgan with the thank you.
So why did it take this long for Natasha Cloud to get signed? If she's so valuable, why was she sitting on the market while training camps opened and preseason games were being played? 3 theories, and they're not mutually exclusive. Theory 1, money. Cloud wanted more than $555,000, and no team was willing to pay it. She probably spent weeks testing the market, waiting for someone to meet her price, and eventually realized this was the best offer she was going to get. Pride is expensive, and at some point, you have to take what's available. Theory 2, the mouth. Not her politics, but specifically how she talked about the WNBA during CBA negotiations. Teams have long memories. When you publicly suggest the league is obsolete and players should just abandon it for unrivaled, don't be surprised when those same teams aren't rushing to sign you. Business is personal in a 12-team league where everyone knows everyone. Theory 3, roster construction timing. Most teams had already finalized their rosters by the time Cloud was seriously looking. Cap space was gone, roster spots were filled. The Sky only had room because they decided to blow things up and start fresh. Sometimes it's just bad timing and circumstance. My guess? It's a combination of all 3, with money being the primary factor. Cloud overestimated her market value, waited too long, and had to settle for less than she wanted.
And of course, once again, welcome to Chicago. Natasha Cloud with the hello. Cloud coming to the Sky. So whatever the reason was for the delay for Natasha Cloud being picked up by a team, whether it was what she stands up for as far as her agenda goes, or if it was her mouth concerning the WNBA leadership during CBA negotiations, or it was just, hey, you got to pay me more money than this. Whatever it was, she is now with the Chicago Sky for a year. So congratulations to her, and we'll see how this all works out. I'll catch you next time, God willing.
Let's zoom out and look at what this entire situation reveals about the WNBA in 2025. First, the league's identity crisis continues. Sue Bird wants to position the WNBA as this bastion of free expression where players can speak their minds without consequences. But the reality is far more complicated. The league celebrates certain types of activism while quietly discouraging others. That's not freedom of speech, that's curated speech. And pretending otherwise insults everyone's intelligence. Second, the business realities of the WNBA are starting to clash with the activist image. Natasha Cloud is a perfect example. She's exactly the type of player the league claims to celebrate: outspoken, unapologetic, willing to challenge power structures. But when she turned that criticism toward the WNBA itself, suddenly teams weren't interested. Because at the end of the day, this is still a business. And businesses don't like employees who publicly undermine them. Third, the treatment of rookies like Hailey Van Lith exposes how little patience this league has for development. She gets drafted, deals with injuries, shows promise in preseason, and gets cut anyway because a veteran became available. There's no long-term investment in young talent. It's all short-term roster management driven by immediate needs. Fourth, and this is the part that bothers me most, the narrative around Natasha Cloud's signing is already being shaped as some kind of victory for player empowerment and free speech. Sue Bird's comments set that tone. But that's not what happened here. What happened is a player overplayed her hand, sat on the market longer than expected, and eventually took a one-year prove-it deal for less money than she wanted. That's not empowerment. That's reality catching up with leverage you don't actually have. Now, does Natasha Cloud deserve to be in the WNBA? Absolutely. She's a talented player who can help the Chicago Sky compete. I'm not arguing she shouldn't be signed. What I'm arguing is that we should be honest about why it took this long and what it actually means. This wasn't some conspiracy to silence her politics. This wasn't the league punishing her for being outspoken about socialism or police abolition. This was teams making calculated business decisions about roster fit, salary cap management, and whether they wanted to deal with someone who spent months trashing the league they're trying to build. And here's the thing about the Chicago Sky specifically. They're not exactly known for avoiding controversy or steering clear of outspoken players. This is the organization that has embraced player activism repeatedly. So if they're the ones who finally signed Cloud, that tells you this was never about her politics. It was about finding the right fit at the right price at the right time. The broader question this raises is about sustainability. Can the WNBA continue to position itself as an activist league while also operating as a business that needs to grow revenue, attract sponsors, and expand its audience? Because those two things are increasingly in tension. Corporate America loves safe activism, the kind that fits on a press release and doesn't alienate potential customers. But real activism, the kind Natasha Cloud engages in, makes people uncomfortable. It's supposed to. So what happens when the league's activist identity starts costing money? What happens when a player's political stance becomes a liability for sponsorship deals or broadcast negotiations? We're already seeing the answer. The league will quietly distance itself while publicly maintaining the appearance of supporting player expression. Sue Bird doesn't want to live in a world where Natasha Cloud is punished for speaking out. Well, Sue, I hate to break it to you, but you're already living in that world. You're just part of ownership now, so you're seeing it from a different angle. The WNBA has always had limits on what kind of speech it tolerates. Those limits have just become more visible as the league has grown and the stakes have gotten higher. Natasha Cloud is in the league now. She's got her one-year deal with Chicago. And I genuinely hope she balls out, proves her value, and earns a longer contract with better money. But let's not pretend this whole situation was anything other than what it was. A player with limited leverage eventually taking the best deal available after the market didn't meet her expectations. As for Hailey Van Lith, somebody will pick her up. She's too talented and too young to be out of the league permanently. But her experience with the Sky is a reminder that in the WNBA, roster spots are precious. Patience is limited, and sometimes you're just collateral damage in someone else's transaction. So here's my question for you. Do you think Natasha Cloud was actually being blackballed for her politics? Or was this just a business decision that took longer than expected? And do you buy Sue Bird's argument that the WNBA was built on activism, or is that revisionist history? Let me know in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more WNBA analysis that goes beyond the surface-level narratives. Because in this league, what you see is rarely the whole story.